All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. We finally made it to Cotton Bowl semifinal day. Texas and Ohio State. The Buckeyes, a 5.5 or 6 point favorite based on where you may find this line. And it feels like everyone is on that side. We spoke with Jerry Hamilton of On Texas Football. We spoke with Zach Smith, former Ohio State coach. And they both agreed it feels like this is an Ohio State win. But can Texas win this thing? Can they be competitive? Can they keep this thing a game late and give us some fireworks, some drama like we had last night in the Orange Bowl? I certainly think it's possible, but Texas will need to up their game in a couple of different places. There are some major keys. There are some major factors that I am looking at, and then I'll predict the game. I'll give you my best guess. I got lucky last night that the coin flipped my way. I took Notre Dame. Thought they'd come out ahead just ever so slightly. I had it as a 1 point win, ended up being a 3 point win, but honestly could not have been any closer. A field goal at the very end to end up giving the Irish a spot in the national championship game. The first big question I have is QB play for both teams. Will Howard has played extremely well this postseason. He's played extremely well through these playoffs. And, since that Michigan game, he has looked really good. Now, very small sample size. So that's one side of things. You could say, well, that's TJ, that's just 2 games. You can't build the entire narrative off of that. You're completely right. However, he played 2 really, really good defenses when he took down both Tennessee and took down Oregon in dominating fashion. He didn't just squeak games out. Ohio State obviously blew both opponents out. If Will Howard continues to play at the level that he's playing, and there's a lot more than just Will Howard that goes into it. Obviously, there's the wide receivers. There's the running game. There's that offensive line that's been playing really good the last 2 games. If he plays and the pieces around him allow him to play as good as he has the last couple of games, they will win. To me, that is when Ohio State is an A-type game. If Ohio State has an A or A-plus game in this one, I just don't know that Texas can do enough. Now, Texas can impact that, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But QB play is a huge question. Can Will Howard continue his good play? Can Quinn, on the other side, elevate his play? I know that he was really good to start the game against Arizona State. He was really good in overtime. But then in between there, it wasn't his best performance, and Texas fans will agree with that. Texas fans have commented that, like, dude, he's got to step up. He's got to be a little bit better. He's got to be a little more consistent through the game. Their offensive line has to give him a little bit more time. It's not just all on Quinn. People sometimes think that if you say something negative, you're dogging the kid. No, I don't think so at all. I do think they have to play better around him. The running game has to be better for him to be successful. They were incredibly one-dimensional against Arizona State, who sold out against that run, as Jerry said when he was on earlier this week. But Quinn has to elevate his play. He has to be a little bit better. He can't lose the turnover battle. He can't be throwing bad interceptions. If they're up late in the fourth quarter, he can't throw an interception that gets Arizona State, or Ohio State in this case, back into the game. I think he needs to play a little bit better. He needs to up his game. He's got the talent. He's got the wide receivers. He's got the weapons. Can he be just a little bit better than he's been? They're going to need it in probably what we expect to be a shootout. Something that'll take some pressure off of Quinn is the Texas running game. That has to get back to form. 290 yards against Clemson and then 50 against Arizona State. Now, I know very different defenses, very different game plans, very different situations. That can't happen. You can't. If you tell me that Texas is rushing for 50 yards tonight, I'll tell you who's winning the game, and I'll probably bet an alternate line of Ohio State by a lot of points if that's what happens. They have to run the ball for a couple of reasons. One, they got to take the pressure off Quinn. I just spent a couple of minutes talking about how Quinn has to be better. You want to know how he's better? The offensive line is better and the running game is better. That's how Quinn will be better. Take a little bit of pressure off of him, right? Second, Ohio State's offense is absurd right now. And so by running the ball, you're limiting their possessions, right? Texas scored so quick. They were up 17-3 in the blink of an eye. And what was that because of? Well, a 2-play drive and then a punt return touchdown, and they didn't have to do anything offensively, right? Like they were like boom, boom, boom up. And that just put their defense back on the field over and over and over again. That can't happen against Ohio State. You can't go. I don't think you can go possession for possession for possession for possession. You're going to need some long, sustained drives like they had against Clemson. Break their spirit, wear them down. That's easier said than done against this Ohio State defense, which is very, very good. But if Texas is going to have a way to win this thing, a way to stay competitive in the fourth quarter and keep this a game, the rushing game has to get closer. I won't even say to that 290, but they got to get up over a $125, right? Like they've got to ground and pound a little bit, and they've got to use the clock. They've got to take some of that pressure off of Quinn. That'll be a big deal. The kicking game, something Texas fans probably don't want to talk about right now. Auburn's got to be a little bit better, right? And I don't know what the heck you do to fix that after just, 8, 9, 10 days, but it's got to be better than it was. He's got to be a little more consistent. He's got to be able to go out there and make kicks when his number is called. And I know that there were a couple there late in the Arizona State game that didn't go his way. Whatever he's had to do, obviously, in the time off to mentally reset, to mentally prepare. If this game comes down to a kick, if you're Texas, you're probably sweating absolute, not even bullets, just daggers, right? Hoping and praying and willing the ball to go through the uprights. This trench battle is going to be interesting to me. Ohio State's defensive line, one of the best in the country. There's no doubt about it. A lot of depth against the Texas O-line, which has been really, really good all year, but then again, gave up, 3 sacks, 7 or 8 tackles for loss against Arizona State. That can't happen here. You can't have Ohio State living in your backfield, making life a living hell for Quinn Ewers. Again, we talked about having to take the pressure off of Quinn. That Texas offensive line has to be better today than they were against Arizona State. They have to be more like they were against Clemson. Now, Ohio State's defense is a lot better than Clemson's. There's no doubt about it. They're one of the best in the country. And so it's a tall task. But I do think that's a really interesting aspect of this too. The place I do kind of think Texas could have some success, right? The place where I feel kind of good about Texas is their defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. Now, Ohio State's offensive line has played really well the last 2 weeks against 2 really good fronts. Tennessee, one of the best in the SEC, there's no doubt. And then Oregon, one of the best in the country as well. Ohio State's offensive line, though, still a little bit banged up. Now, they've played better. They've asked their guys to do some things differently, and they've coached them really well the last few weeks. Simmons, though, insane monster. Can Texas' defensive line create some havoc? Can they get Will Howard under some pressure? He has looked as comfortable as me sitting on my couch the last 2 games that I have watched him play. If you can kind of create a little bit of havoc, if you can force him into mistakes, if you can get him outside the pocket, if you can rush him a little bit, Texas defensive line, then I think it opens up your path to victory a little bit more. He is sitting back there cool, calm, and collected like a freaking cucumber, ready to throw darts to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka, Trey, whoever, ready to go. Guys out of the backfield. That defensive line for Texas has to show up, and they have to come and get after Will Howard in a big, big way. I wonder about where this game is played, not location on the scoreboard. Is this a game that Texas can keep in the high 20s? If you can keep Ohio State around 28, 27, somewhere in there, I think you have a chance. If this game gets up into the 30s or 40s, that's where I think you struggle. I don't know that Texas can go blow for blow. This is not rocket science. I'm not breaking anything that's, oh, wow, TJ said, keep it lower scoring. You have a chance. No, that's certainly not rocket science. But I'll tell you right now, if anybody in this game gets to 40, I'm taking Ohio State. If this game's down in the 20s, then I think this game is playing out a little bit more like Texas wants it to be played, and they've got a pretty good chance of pulling this upset, right? Getting a win and getting to the national championship. 30s, a little bit more of a question mark, but I'll tell you, if it gets over 35, that's certainly where I like Ohio State. Ohio State probably feels like this is a race to 31. Could they score more than 31? Absolutely. If they score 31 on that really good Texas defense, which teams have not been able to really do, I know that a game went to overtime, but outside of that, and there were some trick plays and stuff involved, Texas defense is still really good, right? And so I don't want to take away from what Arizona State did, but you've got Cam Scatterbu throwing a touchdown pass. You've got Cam Scatterbu catching a long pass down on the sideline. Outside of a couple of really, really explosive plays, Texas' defense was really good in that game and really good for most of that game. If they can keep Ohio State down at all, which is a challenge, then I think they've got a chance. Where is the game played? 20s, 30s, 40s? Certainly where it's played on the scoreboard is going to matter. It feels like a crime to get 7, 8, 9 minutes into this thing and not talk about Jeremiah Smith. Is there any way to slow him down? Probably not. I don't know if anybody in the country can. You just have to kind of mitigate what his numbers are, right? He can't, like Jerry said, he can't go for 200 yards. He can't have 3 touchdowns. He can't go for 8 receptions. If you can limit him some, if you can shade somebody kind of his way, if you can take your chances when you have a safety on that side of the field, then I think you're in a little bit better of a position, a little bit better of a spot to kind of mitigate some of the damage that he's going to cause, but he is going to cause some damage. He's going to have some big plays. How do you rebound from him? How do you limit him? Can you make some tackles, right? There were times where Oregon had him in the field of play and couldn't get him down. Think about that first touchdown to open the game up. That's a big deal for sure. Texas's defense has to keep Ohio State from starting quickly. And I'll say this about Texas. They have started extremely well in both games. They let big leads slip away, but Texas hasn't come out and just gotten manhandled from the jump. And that's a big deal because in Ohio State's first two games, the game was over before the first quarter was over, right? And Texas doesn't strike that same, I don't see that same thing happening to Texas. Now, it very well may, right? Ohio State may come out and make me look like an idiot, but I don't think Ohio State jumps on Texas 17-0 after the first quarter. That'll get clipped if that does happen, and so feel free to share it, Ohio State fans, if it happens. But I do think that Texas is built a little bit differently to start a game a little faster, play a little bit better to start, and make this a second half game. If this is a second half game, then we have something to talk about. If this isn't a second half game, if this game is a 10 or 17 point lead at halftime for Ohio State, they're going to win the game, right? I don't see Texas coming back, unfortunately, right? And that's not a shot. I just think that you have to keep yourselves in it in the first half. How do you do that? No dumb turnovers. Run the ball effectively. Limit them offensively. Maybe you play a little bit more bend, don't break. Make them use some of the field, not take these explosive shot plays that they've been getting off in the first half. But you have to make this a second half game. And that, to me, is not necessarily on Quinn. It's not on the offensive line. It's not on the running game. Not on Sark necessarily. It's on the defense to keep Ohio State from starting incredibly quickly. It doesn't matter how good your offense is. The way that Ohio State has moved the ball in the first half against both Tennessee and Oregon, that is where I think Texas needs to limit them, needs to slow them down. I think if you can hold Ohio State under 17 or less in the first half, you put yourself in position to have a chance in this game. You go to the half down 17-10, you go to the half down 17-13, two field goals there. That'd make you feel pretty good, I guess, if you were a Texas fan. You go to the half in this thing down a score or less, you've got a shot. You go to this thing down 2 or 3 scores at the half, we might as well turn off the second half because I don't know that Texas is built to come back against this Ohio State team. They become too one-dimensional. Ohio State's too good at continuing to put points on the board in the second half. That is a big deal to me. And then lastly, you got to win the turnover battle. I said that about the game last night, and that actually didn't end up being the case. However, Notre Dame lost the turnover battle 2-1 last night, but both of their turnovers were in the other opponents. They were on the other side of the field, right? Notre Dame turned the ball over twice. Penn State had to drive pretty good distances to score their 10 points off of turnovers, whereas Drew Allar's interception was deep in his own territory and gave Notre Dame perfect field position to take that last field goal and get the win. That is the difference. You not only have to win the turnover battle, you have to win the timely turnover battle. You can't have the detrimental mistake. You remember Georgia had a detrimental mistake against Notre Dame that led to a direct 7 points. Remember, Penn State had the detrimental mistake that led to a direct 3 points. That was the game-winning field goal for Notre Dame. That's what Texas can't do in this, right? If there are going to be turnovers and they happen near midfield or on the other side of the field, yeah, that might take points off the board, but you're still making the other team drive the length of the field to score on you. Quinn can't turn the ball over. The running backs can't fumble the ball in their own territory. You cannot give Ohio State short fields. Again, that's not breaking news. I'm not laying anything on you that you don't know or you haven't heard before, but that's a massive part of this. You give Ohio State short fields. Every field is a short field with Emeka and Jeremiah and those guys out wide. You can't make it even shorter, right? You cannot give them freebies. And that's what I think they'll be doing if they don't hold on to the ball and they don't possess it the way they need to. Let me know your thoughts, Texas fans. How confident are you? Ohio State fans, how confident are you? Do you feel like there's more pressure on you and that kind of makes you nervous? Everybody expects you to win. You're the big favorite in this game. You're going to Texas and you're nearly a touchdown favorite in some books. What are your thoughts on that? If I have to project this, I think this one's kind of easy to pick. The spread is maybe a little bit deceiving to me. I think it's interesting that everyone seems to be picking Ohio State in this thing, and so that kind of gives me some hope that Texas could cover this. But I tend to think that Howard's going to play a little bit better. I tend to think that that defensive line for Ohio State is going to limit Texas's rushing game. I worry about Texas's kicker. I think that the Texas D-line could show up against that Ohio State offensive line, but I really like the way they've played through their first two games. I like the way that they've been coached, and I kind of like the coaching advantage in this too. I love Sark. I don't think this is a Franklin versus Freeman coaching advantage by any means, where I thought Freeman had a definite edge, but I do think a slight edge probably goes to Brian Kelly and obviously Ryan Day and the rest of that Ohio State staff. And so I lean Ohio State here. And in fact, I'd take them with the points too. I'd take them by about a touchdown or more. I think that this is Ohio State's game to lose. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. College football is weird. Football, it bounces a funny way, right? And you never really know how it's going to go down. I think this is Ohio State going to the national championship to play Notre Dame, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the keys to the game? What have I missed? What do you think the difference in this thing is? I just think Ohio State's playing the best football in the country right now. I think I'm going to pick them to win the next game too. However, games are not won or lost based on my prediction or any other talking heads prediction. So I'd like to hear what you think as we inch closer to kickoff. Hey, I'm excited for this game. I think it's going to be better than people think. I don't know that it's the 41-10 blowout that some people may, have seen in other games or other rounds. I think Texas comes out and plays really well in the first half. I just think Ohio State's a little too much when it's all said and done. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. We will certainly get back on here and I'll either eat all the crow or I'll tell you where I was right after the game is over. Enjoy it if you're going. Bundle up. Stay warm. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to College Football Addiction.